So for the first one is from an article by Jasmine Woe from 2023, and it's on that the demographics of citizen science. This is mostly related to the United States, and what it shows is that from 2016 to 2021, the percentage of women participating in citizen science projects has been increasing. But then on the other hand, you have the world map by another very interesting paper that looked into Zooniverse data and saw where what was the proportion of women in participating in these projects. And as you can see, a lot of the countries do not have data, especially in the African continent. In most countries, women make up less than 50% of participants. But one very interesting data is that the top 3 projects on Zooniverse, where more than 50% were female contributors, were all related to wildlife and nature. These are mostly projects related to camera traps, image identification, or other kinds of surveillance. And so it's good for our overall discussion here about biodiversity. So thank you so much. I'll leave you to Tanya. To Tina, sorry. Tina, yeah, it's you too.
Yes, no, I think this is thank you, Antonio, for kind of setting the stage. And I think this is what we wanted to also bring here. You know, when parties are telling them there are lack of tools or how to do it, money involved, and what we're really bringing to the table is saying that no, you know, the process for the KM-GBF is supposed to be a whole of society approach, and there are initiatives being done all over the place. So it's also the time to you know, link the few, like the synergies of how do we really bring the researchers, the citizen science, the methodologies, the practical people, the scientists versus the policymakers together. So that is our kind of way to start this conversation. And of course, I mean, and data doesn't lie. I mean, you know, you also, like what Antonio shared, that the data also shows that women are a very large part of that. But I'm going to kind of wrap it up a bit at the end, because I'm also looking at the technical side. And there are like, I am just like, I talk. But to say that on the panel, we have some amazing women and people who've actually done some very wonderful work. So I really would want to reflect the work that they're actually doing. So I'm going to actually next call on Tanya from the Culprit, who has a good introduction, who will be sharing about the community conserved areas in South Asia portal. This is about the indigenous peoples and local communities led conservation through participatory technology and self-determination. And also these words about what does participation mean? What does self-determination mean? What does indigenous led mean? You will also have that experience. My apologies if you see me running around, because unfortunately that's what we were trying to do. This internet is not working. So we are missing the live streaming, which is very unfortunate because we have some people online. So please don't mind me if you see me like running around your vision left and right. But anyway, not happy to do that. Tanya, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Like I introduced myself, I am here to represent ICCA Consortium. Could we have the next slide, please? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're all gathered here to talk about biological diversity. And as many of you might know, research says that 80% of the world's biodiversity is held in lands protected by indigenous communities, indigenous and local communities. And so what are ICCAs? The IUCN definition is this: natural and modified ecosystems, including significant biodiversity, ecological services, and cultural values, voluntarily conserved by indigenous and local communities through customary laws and other effective means. that's the definition of what an ICCA is. So what defines ICCAs? Essentially, there are three main characteristics. One is that there is a deep bond between the people and the land. Two, there are rules that are enforced by communities. So essentially, they are the main decision makers for their areas. Even if not legally recognized, they are the ones who manage the areas. And third, there is actual impact on ground of like conservation happening. So before I move on to talking about the portal, I just want to give you a brief context of some of the ICCAs in India. There are several different types. So from centuries, you know, Indian people, like in other parts of the world, have been conserving and managing their lands. These are, so for example, there are sacred groves and sacred forests where people declare inviolate zones where there's no hunting, no logging. These are some of the examples. There are species which are worshipped by certain communities. But that is not the only type of ICCs. There are also newer initiatives where people have, you know, revived their forests or their wetlands for the purpose of livelihoods or conservation. There are CCAs which are born out of some or the other struggle or resistance against development projects or other things. Like this Tosa Maidan in Kashmir, India was, their grassland was being used as an army firing range. So they struggled against it and they kind of organized themselves and now they're managing that CCA. Similarly for, there are grazing pastures in Rajasthan, which have been revived by the communities there. The lesser florican is a beautiful bird found in India. The Fasi Parthi community used to hunt that bird, but now they have turned into protectors of that bird. So there are several of these new initiatives also happening with, you know, the changing times. Okay, so but while there are so many different CCAs with different reasons of existence and different ecological and social factors, they all have something in common. They're all threatened. And there are various kinds of threats. One is restrictive laws and policies. So in India, we still have the colonial system of laws where, you know, people, like they see people and animals as separate. They have to be separated. They can't coexist. So there are exclusionary protected areas which are declared. And in the process, a lot of people are displaced. Their access rights are banned. And all of that happens. They lost this huge loss of homes, of livelihoods. There are land tenure issues. There are development pressures. So mega projects coming onto their lands, over extraction from the forests or wetlands. Of course, climate change impacts invasive species, internal differences, conflicts within the communities, changing aspirations, people wanting to move out, loss of traditional knowledge. There's also appropriation of traditional knowledge where you know, people are not recognized. So with all of these things in mind, we felt a need to have a database on community conserved areas to highlight their conservation efforts, to bring visibility and recognition for them. Because despite the fact that there are so many across India, and they have been there for centuries, there is no comprehensive database on CCAs in India. So we felt a need for creating that. And this could also then, you know, act as a tool for analysis, for research, for policy, which can impact policy change. And it can also simultaneously act as a platform which can help communities themselves to exchange information, exchange knowledge, exchange ideas. Oops, sorry. No, that's okay. That's okay. Yes. So this is what the portal looks like. Basically, we have an interactive map with all the locations of CCAs, with the list on the side, which has the basic information of CCAs. Now, much of this data is quantified, so you can search you can search and filter according to, say, the ecosystem, the legal status, the impacts. Then we also have geospatial layers so that you can see the CCAs in conjunction with, say, population data or forest cover or climate data, soil types. A lot of different geospatial layers are available. They are also part of the portal. We have a special section on the analytics. And then we also have relevant resources which can be useful for communities, such as, say, relevant laws or policy briefs or toolkits which communities can use. This is the sort of data that people share on the portal. The description, the origin, the histories, the governance and management systems, recognitions, the impacts, opportunities, challenges. Of course, communities are free to share as much or as little as they want. Sorry. Yes. So how the participation of the portal, it's an open source platform, so it is open to all. So in that sense, it is like a citizen science platform that Antonio was talking about, because the data is crowdsourced. We felt that it is very essential for the platform to be open so that communities can themselves tell their stories and, on their histories, on their systems. It's very essential that they say these themselves. So any community can just create a profile and the data will be online. So many of the communities do self-documentation. We also reach out to like grassroots level organizations to collaborate for this documentation. And we also collect data that is already available in the public domain, because we want to capture the length and breadth of CCAs within the country. And here is some of the data that we have been able to get. So there are more than 800 CCAs currently documented on the platform. This is an example of a graph that's on the analytics section. There are, so this is on motivations, like what were the motivations for people to start conserving. And as you can see, there are several different ones, ranging from like livelihood and ecological functions to religious and cultural reasons. So the essential difference between a CCA, ICCA and a protected area is that an ICCA, in a protected area, it's declared for the purpose of conservation, whereas an ICCA can be formed for different reasons, like all of these, but the result, the impact is conservation. That may not have been the initial intention, but that is the impact. So as you can see, these were the motivations, but these are some of the impacts. Like 55% respondents said that they have experienced improved and sustained ecological services. 61% said reported good or improved diversity and populations of wildlife. There are also socio-economic impacts on the well-being of people. So 85% reported community empowerment. 59% people replied to better access to their NTFPs. 34% said revival or continuation of cultural or religious associations. 52% reported better access to fodder for their cattle. And so yes, empowerment of women and youth and disadvantaged sections was reported from 63% of the participants. And 31% reported women's committees in decision making. So while we do not have too much quantifiable data for gender, but we do have several, we do have qualitative data. So several case studies on the portal, which are, so for these three, for example, are women-led CCAs. There is the one panchayats in Uttarakhand in the north of India who have been, like women have been in leading positions since the past 2 decades. There is Mrinalini, which is in central India, which was again, they have collectivized themselves and women are in decision-making positions. Similarly, Vidarbh is again in central India. It's a fishing community that manages these wetlands, and traditionally women don't fish, so they were never included in the bodies for decision making. But then when they started to realize that and talk about these things, women are involved in like lake restoration because they are agricultural laborers. So like planting and all of that you see in the photograph happening there, they're involved with that. They're involved with sorting and marketing of the fish. They are involved in like math and record keeping because they're better, they do way better than men in that aspect because they're less drunk. But so yes, there are several such examples of CCAs across India on the web portal. And I would like to end with that. Sorry, next slide, please. Yes, so that is our URL, communityconservedareas.org, and this is the QR code. Please have a look. Any feedback is most welcome. There is an email address on the portal as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya. I think that was really very nice. Like, I think it's also really interesting to see the amount of data that you actually have. And that can be also a source of already informing the different aspirations of the KM-GBF and how each study, the 800 of them, I bet can be used as looking at how communities are doing some good work. It could be, I don't know, it's not only 30 by 30, right? The CCAs, also understanding that the Convention on Biological Diversity is not limited to the 23 targets of the KM-GBF. The component of the convention itself is three-pronged. So we always talked about conservation. Then you also have sustainable use, and you also have access and benefit sharing. And I think until Antonio and Tanya, you've also shared that, like, your CCAs, we have fisher women, you have fishery sector, you have conservation, you have species, right? So though they are there, you talk about CCAs, but also seeing how elements of CCAs can or are already contributing to different elements of the whole GBF. So that's also for us to see that there is these amazing things. It's just for us to kind of pool it around and see where they fit in. So please check this out. This is amazing, wonderful work. And I know that they've been putting a lot of, it's been a lot of energy to putting this together. And also the request for the parties, what you're saying is that, these are community-led or society-led instruments that can also support, because it does take a lot of energy putting a mapping like that together. It's not a joke. So thank you so much. Now next on the panel is Cindy. She already had her introduction, and where Tanya talked about the CCAs. We'll also take like a zoom in from the Southeast Asia perspective. And what Cindy is going to be sharing about is a women's role in defining community conserved areas in Indonesia. So Cindy, you have the floor. Do you want to sit here or you're okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, because I feel so bad. We are kind
I
of
will try to
IT,
move a bit.
like, okay.
Yeah, I think I already sent my presentation, but then thanks, Tanya, because you have complete half of my presentation. I don't need to explain you what is ICCA, but what I want to emphasize here is that what makes ICCA different with protected areas is even the ICCA is really able to see the women's lens, because conservation is not about species, it's not about ecosystem, but it's all about contributions of humans, including women, that can provide the long-term outcomes that can sustain ecosystem, species, and so on and so forth. So what makes it different is that we're not only conserving, indigenous people, local communities, and women is not only conserving certain wood and trees. We're conserving more than that. Even something that people might not see as conservation, such as conserving local paddy, local rice fields, might be not counted as conservation. But for us, for indigenous people, it contributes so much for conserving our nature, our Mother Earth. So that's make it different from the state protected areas and state conservations. So then here, I would like to just share our experience in Indonesia working with also mapping ICC, a very huge work. It needs a lot of money. It needs a lot of people to gaining, to involve in the process. So the most before, so the critical things that we need to see in the mapping itself is that there's a very lack of women participate and also become a leader of the mapping itself. Sometimes when we talks about mapping, it was really dominated by men's roles, the lens of men seeing the territories. But that's why most of the mapping process sometimes not be able to like covering women's stories within the indigenous territories or ICC itself. We very lack of the stories of the women, and this is something that we really need to try to fix actually. But in our work in Indonesia, we seeing women a lot in the governance system itself, right? It's not they involve in the governing of the ICCA. They involve in protecting biodiversity. They involve in ensure that there's a stock of these certain species or ecosystems can be there still remaining in their territories because they are depend on that. That is their life. It's a part of their livelihood. But unfortunately, based on our experience, that women are only placed in the domestic work, even in the ancestral domain. Sometimes they are not able to involve in the decision-making process. And I think because of that also, if we really looking into the process of participatory mapping, sometimes women are not really being involved in coming to the forest, mapping, do such GPS process, things like that. Because sometimes people will say, oh, they don't have enough energy to come to the forest. It might be make them tired to do that. But somehow it makes the whole stories about territories are not holistic enough to say that there are so many actors involved in the conservation itself. So this is something that we also see in the grassroots level. In the context of Indonesia, we also found so many areas that actually significance for the women itself. So they're involved in the they are leading the conservation of certain areas. One example, we found so many case study. Can you move to the next? Okay. Okay, this is some of the case study that we found. It was only a few actually. But then we found like certain area that is actually only belong for the women because women are there. They depend on the livelihood. They take some advantage. They are conserving certain species because they need to use it for certain rituals, for the cultural needs, for their kids, their family, and so on and so forth. There are so many stories about that, but sometimes it's keep invisible in the system, in the in the mapping process itself. So this is something that we are trying to see the sexuality of of the mapping itself and how their contributions of their conserving nature and also resiliency the territories itself. So women's mostly are contributing in all of the conservation practices in the governance system, not only for domestic work, as it's it always be a stigma even in indigenous peoples group. but then they actually involve in all of the process of conserving nature. So this is something that also happened in the grassroots level in Indonesia. And then one of the most important thing about women's itself is that in the end of the day, they practices in the ICCA actually also contribute for the one of the most important thing is the advocacy process, is the recognition process. Something that Tanya has been shared. We work to have a GIS system, which is cost a lot of money to create such system that the communities themselves they have to struggle also for the participatory mapping. The final destination is the land rights, is the recognitions of their practices itself, is their contribution. So therefore, there should be, there should be work beyond of just chasing the target tree, for instance, only as the, work for us to conserve this 30% of land and coastal areas or water areas. It should be more than that. If we can take a look into the GBF framework right now, people might talking about the headline indicator, protected areas, and OECL. But actually, the indigenous and traditional territories or ICCAs there, it can be also counted as a part of the achievement of the target. So aside from this protected and OECM, the most important thing is actually to secure the land rights of the communities, because it's there, they need that to continue their work to conserving Mother Earth. Without such recognition for their tenure rights, there should be so many conflict happen. We know that the declaration of protected areas always raising conflict, even though there should be like adjustment with traditional knowledge, so on and so forth, but it's not really coming to a genuine objective to recognize contribution of indigenous people's rights, indigenous people contribution for conservation. So what we're doing in Indonesia is that we're trying to create more visibility for ICCAs, and by that it can be pushed for the government. We can encourage that to government so they can also conclude that as a part of consideration in policy making process. Even though in fact that there are the number of the recognition is very lack, but we believe that in somehow in country like Indonesia's number is very important. It's matter. We know that there's an article on Nature questioning about 80% contribution, but in the case of Indonesia, it still matter. Number is still matter. So I think I will stop on that just to say that I think we have a really big work to increase this possibility of women's and also indigenous people for conservation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for that perspective. And I think this is where I see the important work out here. And I think you very much, again, it's kind of common stream within the three so far has been recognition, right? So saying that how citizen science can also contribute to a larger agenda. It's not only about, okay, species, but rather how citizen science by people, by community-led, can also somehow help in not only recognizing their contributions, but also recognition of their rights. And I think it's very important because it's not only about conservation, right? Because if you're looking at, like you talked about it, it's also about that nature is not empty. If you always talk about the reciprocal, the interrelationships with the biocultural relationships of forests, of nature. It's like a good example. I don't need to have a scientist about it. If you're looking at the most diverse, most so-called critical, rich biodiversity areas in the world, people are living in them. So it gives you a stance of saying that people are not the problem, right? They are part of the ecosystem themselves. Okay. So next one is also a wonderful speaker who unfortunately couldn't join us. And her name is Felipa. And she is also with Antonio from the University of Coimbra, and will be presenting a participatory efforts in marine plastic pollution mapping. So Antonio, back to you, and any introduction from you will be great.
Yeah. So again, I'm back, and unfortunately, my colleague Filipa Bessa, she's been working very much on marine plastic pollution, especially in various ways, from the more scientific kind of interactions, but also really bringing people into this matter, and also using, and as I've mentioned before, citizen science is also a form of awareness, of engagement of people into this problem. So Filipa was very kind in recording a video that I will play now. And if you have then afterwards any specific questions towards her, this is her email, so you can check it, and I can also try to help.
Hello, I'm Filipa from the University of Coimbra. Hello, I'm Filipa from the University of Coimbra, Portugal, the Center of Functional Ecology. And I'm really happy to participate in this amazing session with you. And I'm going to share my experience and citizen science initiatives here in Portugal, and how we are using the engagement of citizens to map marine plastic pollution. So I'm a marine scientist by my background in ecology, and today I'm going to share with you our projects here. So as you may know, marine plastic pollution is a pressing issue nowadays. I would say not only the marine, but the entire planet is facing this threat. And we know that at least 8 million tons of plastic are reaching the ocean. The projections for the future are also not very positive. In a business as usual scenario, the use and production of plastics are expected to triplicate in the near future, which means that we will, of course, use and produce more plastic waste, mostly in countries highly populated where waste management is poor or inefficient. And these led us to these, the plastic narrative are completely in line with the triple planetary crisis that we are facing, and are closely related with climate change, with the biodiversity loss, and the pollution in any forms. These are contemporary threats, and of course that they are very well represented in the current policies and initiatives like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, where life below water are really important, but also in the coming global biodiversity, where we know that all the species in the planet can be affected by all these forms of pollution. We have the Ocean Decade momentum, and also we are signing the first plastic treaty. However, we missed yet baseline information about the levels of these type of pollution. We don't know yet the total risks and the impacts to the planet and the people, and we need to monitor plastics in all ecosystems. Even though we are very well equipped with technology in some parts of the world, we have satellites, robots, we have drones that can map and add information about the levels of plastics in the ocean and in terrestrial ecosystems, but we still need a lot of data, and there is some locations where this information is absent. So it's where citizen science can help us, not only in constructing this narrative, but also to engage people in this problematic. Marine pollution awareness is a key to solve this problem. Engaging people in citizen science not only provide us the tools to monitor and combat marine pollution, but we contribute, of course, to this awareness, to to education as well of how to protect and avoid the use of materials that we don't know yet the end of life. With this in mind, and also to engage local population here in Portugal, we designed a simple way of collecting information about plastic waste in Portugal, using a platform entirely in Portuguese, lixomarinho.app, which means that we need to translate all the information to everyone. This is based also on scientific evidence, and we have a reduced list for kids to be very easy to collect information, even for kids that don't know how to read this information and these platforms. It's a very user-friendly. At the end is open data that we are providing to everyone, and we can link to other international initiatives. This is a well succeed, but still needs not a lot of refinements. And to this regard, we are now preparing the second version of our platforms with a gamification to engage more volunteers and more citizens in this problematic and this initiative. We think that we have here huge opportunities to not only provide data for the scientific community, we have this engagement with everyone, but we can also collaborate with local and national actors. And of course, at the end, we are communicating scientific concepts that need to be communicated in a plain language and in our native language, of course. We, of course, face some challenges, namely, validation of information and data management. Sometimes it's not easy to motivate people all the time to engage with other stakeholders. And of course, like in many other initiatives, we need substantial financial support to guarantee the long-term engagement in the platforms. Since plastic pollution occurs also in small and smaller versions of plastic, which are called microplastics, in parallel we design other initiative, the Portugal Pellets Watch, where the intention is to map and collect the smaller fraction of plastic waste, microplastics, and these in particular, the pellets or nurdles, are the raw material of every plastic objects, and they are lost every year in huge quantities. Just to let you know how species can be affected by ingestion of these pellets, we can show you here some examples. Is a huge problem nowadays, and we need to come back to this form of pollution as well. So this observatory of pellets is intended as well to be local and regional. I mean, Portuguese, and easily we can scale up to other regions and Portuguese-speaking language countries as well. And the idea, of course, is to involve citizen and in data collection, but here with a particular focus to the industry. We want other stakeholders to be involved because for the plastic narrative, it is imperative to have one of the big players in the negotiations, but also in the awareness and talking about how to solve this issue. At the end, we are still trying to reduce the way plastic pollution, and in this case, pellets, are lost to the environment, and we are communicating and raising awareness to this issue as well. So at the end, we truly believe that empower citizen is important, but using this power to make impactful change happen, of course. With these regional initiatives, we can, of course, duplicate our efforts and engage global communities actively, and we can use the digital platforms that we have nowadays to drive this change that we truly need. This is an effort that we need to accomplish. And again, I would like to thank the opportunity to be here today with you, and I hope that you have an excellent session today. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Filipa.
I'm going to give Filipa a rest. No, it was really very unfortunate. And I think one of the slides that hopefully you all saw was, again, once again showcasing how the work that Antonio and his team are doing. And that's what I kind of caught my eye, because when they were sharing about this app, you must have seen that that what they have tried to respond to is respond to not only the Sustainable Development Goal targets, but they have also mentioned, there was a graph there, if you've seen, was also in target 4, which is on marine pollution. So also seeing that there are these works going on to respond to the KM-GBF, and how can we really amplify that work much more further in these spaces, only to, also to communities like yourselves to have that opportunity, and also sharing. So, you have everybody's emails, and that's how the community will grow. So I know we are right on time for event. Yeah, but so I was going to ask you, so you've seen these amazing presentations. So if any questions, including feedback, we are happy to hear from you. So any, including case study, including please sharing about what work you may be doing on citizen science. So the floor is yours. I can take 2 or 3 speakers to begin with. So please introduce your name. I already see a hand up there. Please join us here on the table with a mic because we don't have roaming mics, I think. Do we? Perfect. We have roaming mics. Yeah, please have a seat. Thank you. Hello, is this working? Check, check, check.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much. So much good talk here. And I am Leela Higgins. I work at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, and I run a program called the City Nature Challenge, which is in many cities, including Portugal. And we had 690 cities this last year take part, and we use the iNaturalist app and other biodiversity monitoring tools to document nature in cities. We are coming up on our 10-year anniversary next year, and we invite anyone who wants to join us for the City Nature Challenge 2025 to sign up. We're going to be doing a talk. We just partnered with Cities with Nature, the eClay program. We're going to be announcing that at the 8th Summit. And yeah, we'd love to have you join us at our events that are coming up. We're going to be talking in the Academia and Research Hub, and then also in the eClays Hub on the 25th, I think. So if you're interested in joining, we would love to have you on board. Thank you all very much.
Who's there? Somebody else? Oh, anybody else? Yes, I see a hand. Please, the mic is going. Can you just give them the mic?
Yo, see. Check,
Yeah.
check.
Oh my God, I cannot see. I'm blind. Sorry, I have a very bad headache. Wait, wow, what such an amazing talk. I'm Zora. I'm a PhD student from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And yes, we have also iNaturalist, and we will participate on that for sure. But one of my main questions was mainly from the Rajasthan one. I used to live in India for 7 years, and I met Rajasthan many times. One of the main challenge of that community was like they didn't have funding, and they are very poor. That's a lack of word. I think that's what I'm going to use. Yesterday, I was seeing the people in Madagascar. They were saying that everyone in their community wanted to engage, but they didn't have even a simple funding for day-to-day life. And the moment the funding came, the community, the government, everyone engaged. Do you have this kind of funding available for the people? I mean, anyone else want to join in too, but like specifically in Rajasthan that people can use that?
Portal. for our portal, we do try to get funding and for engaging communities, because we do realize that, such kind of documentation does take a lot of time and effort. So we try to find honorariums, and we especially try to engage young people in the documentation, which also kind of, for them, the whole process is also getting to know about their own histories and cultures. So yes, we do try to find funding for that. And we also collaborate with organizations who are already working on ground, who might possibly have funding for such activities.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Nomsa Sibego from South Africa, a traditional healer. And I run an organization called Nature Speaks and Responds. And what we've done is we have taken traditional healers in the country, which number about 3 million, and we're turning them into citizen scientists. And the reason for that is the fact that we touch every part of nature in our country. We basically touch rivers, mountains, animals, plants, and everything else. So we're the best placed to gather information for scientists so that we know exactly what's happening in the country. The problem that I have, and which I think is similar to what the lady before said, is the finance. Unfortunately, there are no initiatives that are financing anything to do with citizen science. I've been able to have successes in around Gauteng, which is my province, but other provinces are calling for me to come through, but unfortunately there is no money for me to get there. So I wanted to find out from the panel if there's any funding or any structures that actually look at such things, or what assistance I can get in being able to apply for such, so that it becomes successful, because I believe we are very well placed to gather a lot of information. We just need the assistance to do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. I can just talk very briefly from even the Portuguese experience. There has never been a directed call, for instance, for projects related to citizen science. So all of these projects, we usually do it on the side of, for instance, research projects or other initiatives. And we try to, but I understand that it's not the same developing an app or engaging people that need resources, that need to be compensated also for their work, etc. So I unfortunately, I can't give you a specific funding source. For instance, in Portugal, as a member of the European Union, there has been some bigger European projects that sometimes may include other third countries, what Europe calls, a lot of countries in Africa, for instance, but also mainly because citizen science, I think it's getting to a point, and I think there's a colleague of mine that's watching from Portugal. It's getting to a point where it's starting to look into itself and how it should work, and what is working, what is not working, how it should refine their strategies. But for instance, as I was telling you, we didn't even have a formal Portuguese Association of Citizen Science, so that we can go and lobby for citizen science as an institution. And now that we have, our goal also is to get money. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you any further information. I don't know if my colleagues, of course, want to share.
Any maybe 3 more questions, if anybody has. I can see one hand there. And also saying that I've actually started sorry, we forgot to get the list of participants. Please do, because I'm so happy to see your turnout. And I'll make sure that we have all the presentations and the contacts of people. I think there was one from you, from here, yeah. And then I'm going to come back there.
Hi, this is a question for you, Cindy. I noticed, yes. Oh. I noticed on one of the slides that the potential ICCA's overlap with some of the national parks in Indonesia. Have there been any cases where a traditional protected area has transferred ownership or transitioned into an ICCA? And could you tell us a bit about that process, if so?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for our, if we can, we actually have an infographic about that, the overlapping ICCA with the protected areas. And we have to say that actually most of the ICCAs are overlap with the protected areas. It's like more than, it's more than a 26% of the ICCAs and 26% overlap with the protected forests, and then 20% with the protected areas. So it's going to be so much difficult actually if ICCA or community managed area should be, you know, in the condition to overlapping with the protected areas, because it would be, you know, in a political positions, it will be under government control. And it would be very difficult for the government to release that for the sake of indigenous peoples and local community tenure rights. So there's other like a scheme in Indonesia is to push the customary forest. But until now, the process of pushing the customary forest in protected areas is very difficult. And the achievement of that is very less. So in the context of the recognition of the ICCAs itself, I think we have a guideline of the IUCN on ICCA overlap with protected areas. But in some cases, we're trying to pushing the government, especially protected area manager, to like adopting the ICCA's practices or indigenous people traditional knowledge, because community, they will have their own traditional knowledge of zonations of the territories that can be, you know, being aligned with the protected areas context. But then out of that, for us in ICCA's Indonesia, especially, if there's other way to secure community land, other protected areas, then we will go for that. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your work and presenting it today. My name is Rebecca and I work at the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, where I run a community science department and partner with Leela and her team on the City Nature Challenge. One of the things that really struck me about hearing you all talk today is, you know, those of us that run these big programs that use these platforms like iNaturalist that document species occurrence at this like global scale, and we do a lot of work to engage people in making those observations. And I'm especially interested in how we can move those observations toward meeting targets and how we can like bridge that gap between collecting these data and meeting the biodiversity targets. And listening to all of you talk about the ICCAs today, like that work is so critical and so important and so, you know, grassroots and from the people. Like, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can think about how we can bridge these kind of efforts that you talked about today, and how can we think about the biodiversity data that we're encouraging people to collect, how that could aid in the work that you're doing with ICCAs and just help elevate the biodiversity data and help that process. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're trying to elevate as well. Because for us right now, the communities are not only facing the tangible threats, but also intangible threats, something that's away from the community to be understand. Like, yeah, you know what's going on here. But then I think the data of biodiversity, like you said, is very important, because now mapping of the boundaries is not enough. The community needs to start to elevate and how to also documenting their natural assets, how they can, you know, calculate the benefits of their conservation practices that can also, you know, help us, you know, societies in the world to also helping and reverse biodiversity loss. So there should be huge modalities that we need to get there. Resource mobilizations, that is huge also. But one of the most important thing is actually pushing the community to also gain appropriate capacity building for that. Because based on our experience, when the community themselves, they have capacity to document, to be able to do their own participatory mapping, sometimes it also can help us to like effectivize the funds needed for such process. And also the second of all, I think is in the advocacy, collective advocacy process. We need to try to engage more network that can help the community with that, to do such voluntary work for participatory mapping. I think that's on my end.
Hi, I would just like to add to your question on how we can create synergies. On our platform, I did mention that we have like geospatial layers to see CCAs in conjunctions with population data and forest cover, climate data. We are also thinking of adding species occurrence data. But also if global platforms like iNaturalist can have a section to help showcase our efforts, that would be great.
Thank you so very much for staying back. And to be honest, I must say, really amazing, because we didn't offer food and still showed up. Thank you so much, because you always have like, oh my God, we don't have food, I hope people come. But this also shows the interest and the importance that this could possibly pull into. And this is the reason why I've been for biodiversity, University of Coimbra, with Cultivate, with ICC Consortium, was to share this idea and present what was happening and how can we exactly look at these synergies and support each other. Because this work takes a lot of effort besides money. You may have the money, but the amount of time for people to actually contribute. So that was the main idea of having this event today. These are our amazing panelists. I'm going to tell you, like, please target them for any information, but the COP is so big. So hopefully you have familiarized with our faces. I mean, I'm trying to see whether hopefully I'll see you around. If you do want us to get in touch with you, there's a diary going around. If you want, we'll be outside or here. If you can be aircon, please put your information there. We will share all the presentations, so you have links to everything. And with that, maybe anything else? I think everybody's okay. We can wrap up. And I'll just give Antonio here, who's also been the co-organizer for this event and initiating this discussion, some few words for the closing.
Okay, so well, I totally agree with the words of Tina. Hopefully this or these these case studies have inspired you to activate or to create or take part or have doubts or question a lot of these practices. But as she was saying, I'm open for any contact. We can also, this information is also on the side event page on the CBD. So feel free to contact me. Unfortunately, I'll be leaving on Saturday, but tomorrow I'll still be around. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and please come here for one group photo. And whoever has signed up, we will send you the photograph, we promise. So can we take one big group photo, please? Thank you. Whoever has a diary, can you please give it to us?
So whoever is watching on Zoom, thank you very much for attending this session, and see you later. Bye-bye.
Oh yes, and thank you to the online. Hi everybody, before you leave, let's take a photograph. And I think my diary is somewhere. It also